There's nobody on yet. Oh, Dave's on. Hi, Dave. And Jeff. Hi, Jeff. Hi, Sherry. Welcome to running a successful adaptive learning organization brainstorming session. And Mary, guys, feel free to pop in the chat. I'm in Southwest Minnesota. My name's Carrie Zenz with Allen Interactions. It's beautiful, sunny, high 60s today. A nice fall day. Welcome, Stephanie. Just gonna give it maybe one more minute, but we're gonna get started here. Yeah, Mike is having a fun learning experience today with the new system.
It's a gift.
It's a gift, that's right. I'm in Southwest Minnesota, about 3 hours southwest of the Twin Cities. Mike is in Pennsylvania, yep. Feel free to share where we're going to probably get started here. Probably a few more people will trickle in. I know we had a pretty intimate group today, but this is this all came out of the webinar that we had done a few weeks ago on 3 steps to building an adaptive learning organization. When I say we, I really mean Mike Kreska did that webinar. And then out of that, we decided, well, out of the tool sets that were shared, that we would do kind of a live hands-on brainstorming session and show you how you really put these tools to use. So that is what Mike is doing today. He's going to show you how to run a successful adaptive learning organization brainstorming session. So thank you to do this, and I just think thank you for the reminder, Claire, too, on the switch these to everyone. Make sure you switch to everyone so we can all see everyone's messages. You want to take it away, Mike?
Sounds great. I was having a little bit of an audio problem for a second. Can you guys hear me?
Okay. Good. I can hear you good.
All right, fantastic. Well, thanks everyone for taking time. This is a follow-on to a subject that we talked about around 3 elements that you can apply to thinking about your learning ecosystem. It's easy when we think about remodeling our kitchen or our living room or even outdoors. We can quickly kind of draw a picture, and then inside that picture we can think about walls and open spaces and functionality, and how those pieces fit together to give us a version of what that future looks like. When we have more complex things like people, technology, ecosystems, and innovation, where it requires another level of models for us to be able to think about, collect information on, and context. One important thing to remember is words help us look the same direction, and visualizations help us do the same thing. So we looked at 3 models: the adaptive learning organization principles. We looked at something called the learning ecosystem canvas, and we looked at something called the learning ecosystem innovation building blocks. What I wanted to try to do today with everyone is to give you some insight about how you might actually do this in the wild, in a real world situation, using some technology support. Certainly it'd be wonderful to get into a room with people and stick our learning ecosystem canvas on the wall and bring us all together and have coffee and donuts and whatever we might be eating. So I could put the ecosystem canvas up there. I could put the innovation building blocks, and we could just jam with Post-its, and that has a certain amount of utility, but there's also a balance. Can we do that? In many cases, we still can't. And as a compensating behavior, we have done virtual and hybrid workshops for a while and have sort of developed a set of best practices that you might think about applying to using these tools when thinking about your future learning ecosystems. So, with the amount of folks we have here, Rich, if you guys have any questions or comments, that's great. I'm going to do some back into some design thinking and thinking about laying out exercises and how to get people to kind of converge and diverge in their thinking, and give you a little bit of background. And then we're going to jump into a tool called Mural. And I'm going to show you how I set up a mural for today and how I would facilitate. Let's just say it's all 11 of us work in the same learning organization, and I'll pretend that we're all on the same team and take you through conceptually, how that might work in the wild for you. But I think given the size of our group, I really want to make sure that we have the time and the space to explore any questions that you might have, and also to help you right size or situate this in the context of what mission you might be on along the way. So with that said, if you wouldn't mind popping up the next slide here. And if you guys have questions, just jam them in the chat, please. So, design thinking is something, as I said, words help us look the same direction. Visualizations help us see the same thing. So it's iterative and it's visual. We're getting a lot of people to participate kind of at the same time around this. Easy in the same room, harder with abstracted context of disembodied voices talking, and kind of prototyping, what that future could look like in some way. But really, at the core, it's human-centered, serious amount of empathy, thinking about a holistic viewpoint of all the people that are stakeholders, in our space along the way. Kevin Kelly says a network is a place where organic behavior is supported by technology. That could be a fish tank, because glass makes technology, and that unique configuration creates space. But what we have as far as an experience in that fish tank, it's different depending upon what we put inside the fish tank. So a little bit of ecosystems thinking, and we can dig a little bit deeper into some of the design thinking. And so if you really want to do a deep dive on this, the book that I would suggest strongly is a book called Brainstorming. It's essentially the Grimm fairy tales for design thinking. They went out and collected all kinds of different tools and techniques, and there's facilitator tips and tricks in there. It's a really fantastic book. I've been lucky enough to meet James McAnufo and Dave Gray and get awesome conversations going with them to amp this stuff up. But if you really want something to get started and kind of dig deeper into design thinking, Brainstorming is great. And moving on. So really, design thinking is about creating worlds. First, we're going to imagine a world. And what might that be? Well, our future learning ecosystem. Then we're going to create it. We're going to zoom in there and figure it out. Then we're going to start to look at the components and really get inside that world and explore it. And then closing the world. That's the general pattern that's used for any given tool. And I'll show you how this works. On to the next. And so it's not a process. For any given situation, you might have a different set of tools along the way. Today, what we're going to be talking about is the learning ecosystem side. And there's 3 facets to look at this. Look at the learning ecosystem, look deep on the people and the experience, and then look outwards towards innovation. So we're starting with what we know and where we might go. We're going to do a deeper dive, and that might tell us some things. And then that helps us to tune our innovation. So you see, we're playing a game to explore a space collectively together. Mary, you absolutely get the deck. We'll make sure. And so don't think of it as a process. Think about it as a set of toolboxes. Today, I'm going to share with you my little black briefcase. If I got to fly in and figure out what's going on, this is the easiest set of tools that I could use with a group of 2 to 3 people to 30 or 40 people in order to collect the context and get everyone to start visualizing the same things. And so different tools are used for different situations. We're going to take a look at only 3 tools today, but I think if you buy Gamestorming, not getting any royalties, you're going to get happiness and satisfaction from the knowledge that's in there. You're going to see a lot of different tools used for different situations. One of the hardest things about being a practitioner in design thinking is knowing exactly which tools to put together for a specific situation along the way. And so, pattern for an exercise, and we'll take a look at a few of these examples, but this overlays the facilitation. Is we got to set the stage and develop, some themes and collect as many ideas and information as possible, and then get the team to explore further and continue to collect context, and then close with some conclusions or decisions or action in some way. And so the journey together, you might be stringing multiple things. So like A might be our learning ecosystem, B might be some empathy work. And then we say, oh, wait a second, we thought we were going to go on to innovation, but we have so many different types of unique users and concerns. Maybe we have onboarding and high professional identification and development and leadership and management journey tracks. You may actually have to do some of the work and dig deeper in some of the areas, but at the end of the day, gives us some ability to course correct and steer, and then flip in different tools for different exploration spaces. And I think, yeah, so last slide here, and then we're going to flip over to the mural. So the tools that we're going to look at today are mural.co. Mural is a whiteboarding tool. You can get an account for free, and highly recommend it. There's a lot of the different types of canvases and exercises and tools that are out there already inside a Mural, and you can import them in. You can also copy and paste an image, and you can stick that right in Mural. And then you could also add a URL, and it'll snag the image from that URL. And then we're going to look at the learning ecosystem canvas and how that's situated in the context of the exercise, as well as the empathy map, and then how to think about innovation. And then I'll talk about some of the next steps. So any questions or comments before we move on? I'm going to take that as
I don't see any.
all right, sounds good. Well, that was the sound of someone at my house on my ring. Make sure that is off. All right, fantastic. Very good. As I said earlier in the chat, I'm using a Mac because I had a hardware failure, and this is the first time that I've used a Mac for more than 30 seconds, and really appreciate any leniency on any tech challenges that we might have along the way. So this is Mural, and we're inside of a single mural here. As you can see, there's a very, very, very large whiteboard space that's here that I've configured. Oh, good, Jackie. See you in there visiting Ladybug. And I can grab the space and whoops. Oh, there's my first flub. Okay, I can grab this space. I could grab the space. Okay, so I have the overall mural here. Okay. Let's see. Oops. There we go. Perfect. So what I have here, you see the overall mural. If we were in the room together, I would have printed all these out and have them on the wall. And you can see starting from the right is the innovation building blocks. And then the middle is an empathy canvas, kind of working backwards to a learning ecosystem canvas. But then I have some other text that's up here. And then what I would normally do, and you can set up, so you can just paste these images right in here and size them to what you want. So I did a little pre-work here. The bread's coming out of the oven, and to slice it up for you, there's a really nice feature that any object that is in your mural, you can add to something called the outline view. And so if I want to go to the introduction, I can take you there. if I want to go to the team introductions or whatever sections I want. It's very helpful for navigating real time along the way. So let's see, zooming out here, I would orient the team. I would do some type of icebreaker exercise, and there's a ton of stuff that's out there. If you are struggling for icebreaker exercises, I'm not going to send this out to a bunch of people randomly, but if you're interested, email me. We'll make sure you have my contact information, and I'll point you to the Improv Encyclopedia, which has hundreds of icebreaker exercises along the way. So we do some icebreakers. We would set a little bit of context about what we're going to do. Make it super clear for participants, and the fact that we're going to capture where we're at in our learning ecosystem. We're going to explore the edges and future potentials, essentially setting a very clear expectation for participants. The other thing is, a lot of people, when running a workshop with Mural, probably haven't used Mural before. So it's a really good idea to give them a low barrier exercise. And so the low barrier exercise that I like to do is the team introductions. So you guys can all see the team introductions that's there. Normally, all of the participants would also be in this mural, and I would ask everyone to create a Post-it, and you can quickly create a Post-it. And I know Claire's going to help me out here because there you go. Fantastic. And if anyone just clicks, it's automatically going to create a Post-it for you there. And this is a great way to make sure that every one of your participants is actually able to participate because of any technology barriers or challenges. And it gives them that, as I said, a low barrier to their first thing. It's pretty easy to put who I am and what I'm doing there. And I always like to add something fun or funny related to pets or entrance music or walk off the stage music. Or anthems, whatever it might be, just so people can have a sort of personalized experience and a little bit of fun, because this is a playful jam session when you're doing this. One of the important roles as a facilitator is to be able to create a safe, fun space where people are willing to experiment and willing to put themselves out there. The other thing is also, collecting the context enough that people can ideate. So this is easy, because no one wants to make a lengthy introduction when no one else is. So we kind of set the stage for, we're going to really communicate through Post-its, and then we're going to talk about them. So I might say, oh, this is great. Everyone's here. Dave's our XR 3D tech person. Dave, what are you looking forward to in the future? What are you really excited or passionate about in that XR or 3D space? And I might do a couple around the horns and get a few people to kind of commit verbally to participation. That also starts to set a behavior for the workshop. And then before I'd like to move on, I always like to ask, what else? Does anyone else have anything they want to share at this point? So this gives us a team introduction. Now everyone understands the goals. We've removed hopefully any of the technical obstacles that might be there for someone. And we have a little bit of fun. Everyone knows who's here. The good thing about this is these workspaces persist. I have murals that are a year old, that they continue to evolve with teams as they get new context, as they develop new ideas, as they get new data or develop insights. They're able to continually and evolutionarily, have an action plan along the way. So that's kind of a really safe space to get people thinking. Next space is the value proposition. So at the center of the learning ecosystem canvas is a value proposition. And so I like to do this as potentially pre-work. We'll send out a value proposition example, and we'll send out the value proposition structure, and we'll get everybody to take theirs and throw their value proposition in here. Alternately, you can do this right in the context. You want to give people about 5 to 7 minutes to think through and to be able to commit some type of value proposition so that everyone can see the facets of value that people are thinking about. I'll say this, there's a lot of other ways that we do value proposition work and value proposition evolution and value identification. Those are deeper subjects, but if anyone's really interested in value proposition and alignment or those things, please reach out to me. I'd be glad to share some deeper resources, tips, tricks, and tools with you in that space. So now at this point, The participants are having fun. They understand the goals. We all get to see what everyone's value propositions are. So depending upon the size of the group, I'll get everyone to share what their value proposition is, or some additional color around it. So in this example, our field service technicians, we're getting right time learning and knowledge with our mobile tech companion. This is important to me because if I was a participant, I would say, I believe this because they're our front line with our customers. They are the first thing that people see and the last thing that people see. And if we want to own the primacy and recency of that relationship, they have to have the confidence and the competency, and they have to feel like it's demonstrable and that they feel safe doing that work in front of the people they're in front of. The more we can prepare them, the more we can drive our customer experience. So I'd ask people to cross brief essentially between the value propositions that were created. And this starts to create a shared set of contexts, words helping us look in the same direction. And then when we move on to visualization, that's when it helps us to start to see the same things. So I hope that's making sense. If you guys want me to slow down in any way, or you have questions, throw them in the chat, and Claire will keep me, and Carrie and Rich will keep me in check. So the next item in the outline then, it would take people into the learning ecosystem canvas. Now, you might think that, boy, we need to just decide on one value proposition, and that's something that can happen. But what I've found through doing this tons of times, it's enough to collect everyone's value propositions and put those in the deep fryer and see what comes out later, because now everyone has enough context to start to look into the dimensions of the learning ecosystem. So just a quick rewind. Learning ecosystem has 9 elements to it. Value proposition at the center. On the right side is the aspirational side. Where are we at learner relationship wise? Where do we want to be? What are the ways we think about segments and those key journeys along the way? And then how are we reaching people? And what are the channels we're using today? What might we do? What won't we do? And then the value metrics associated with it. How will we measure, the impact, the effectiveness, the engagement, whatever those key value metrics are for the organization. This becomes a pretty, meaty exercise. So what I like to do with this is start with the value prop. We have the context from previous. I'll even take those Post-its and I'll copy them into here so that people can see that really quickly. And then take them through. Folks, if we went out and we made a t-shirt that was blank and we gave everyone markers, and for the last 2 years, we asked everyone, what is your relationship in with learning and development or education or training in this organization? What words might you use? And we started to put those up there. What might people say? And then there are facilitator questions in this and these templates that you can use. And so we'd start tagging Post-its in here and kind of bring them in and group them for today, not, and then tomorrow. So we were grouping them essentially by the facilitator questions. And then I'd work my way around the learner segments, and you've got the cheat sheet here. What are the different types of learners in the organization? Let's start listing them. It's always helpful to have someone sorting with you, and as well as people are jamming Post-its, because through this, I'm just kind of asking and providing the space for the participants to put that in. And we're having discussion and reflecting as people are putting up Post-its. Same thing for the channels and value metrics. And then continuing on to the left side of the learning ecosystem canvas, which is more the practical and tactical side, which is, who do we have on our team? Who do we need? What are we doing? What are we going to do? And if we had no constraints, what would we do? What are the resources and investment drivers? This in itself, if you have a cross-disciplinary team, if you have stakeholders from finance, business, IT, and learning together, is a very fruitful exercise, because everyone really starts to see in the same direction and to see the same model and the elements of all the facets of the learning ecosystem. The other thing that this does then, once you capture this context, you can start to say, well, for this learner segment, if we wanted to produce this learner relationship along the lines of our value proposition, what are the channels and value metrics that we might produce in some way? So that takes us through the ecosystem. Now the next area is really going to focus on the learner segments. And so, as I said, design thinking is really about empathy. And so this is an empathy map. And so I notice it's a little blurry because I pasted it in. But if I put the URL of one in, it would look really well. So I'll kind of read through it. So we would put up who did this work on what, on what date on this canvas and the participants, but we would identify pretty clearly who we were talking about and what they're thinking and feeling. What are the pains in their world and we might have one of these, think about this, for onboarding in general, or onboarding new managers, or some of the different learner segments. And depending upon who you're trying to serve, you may have one or more of these, and you may have some generalized ones too. But really, what are people thinking, feeling, hearing, saying, seeing, and doing? This allows us to really get deep into the headspace of the people that we serve and ensure that we have something that we can back check against. So first, we did the Learning Eco Canvas. We got some ideas. We captured our current context. Now we're drilling in and really zooming into the people and their perceptions at a deeper level beyond their relationship of what they're thinking, feeling, hearing, saying, seeing, and doing, and what their potential pains are that we could resolve, or what the potential gains are that we could seek to deliver for them along the way. So this is a post-it jam once again. One of the things I like to do is a little bit of silent writing. I'll say, all right, there's 10 of you here. I'm going to give you 4 minutes. It doesn't matter where you put something, just go ahead and create post-its and put them where you like. And then I'll stop, and then we'll walk around the clock and talk about those. And then you can either have more silent writing, which is people just putting post-its up, or you can have continual dialogue, and it depends on the energy and the momentum of your group. And people are adding post-its and talking and dialoguing around those post-its. Very useful. But as I stated, it's always, I would recommend doing at least one of these, but you'll probably find that depending upon the differentiation in your learner segments, that you might end up doing more of these along the way. And that's the good thing about Mural. It's a nearly infinite canvas that you can just stack all of these up and work on them. What I've found when you need to do multiples, it's useful to get groups of 2, 3, 4 people, at a minimum, to really dig on that. So if I was running an exercise with 36 people, we do the first stuff, and then we might break out into 8 groups of 4 and do 8 different empathy maps for maybe 2, 3, or even 4 different groups. We're collecting a lot of context and a lot of information, and those individual groups might be spidering out within our overall design map for what the exercise is along the way. So now we've got the ecosystem. We've done a drill in to empathy. We might have drilled multiple holes into multiple learner segments along the way, but we have a lot deeper context around the perception and the needs and feelings and stance of the people that we're trying to serve with a solution. The last then exercise, in this then would be the innovation building blocks. And rewinding on that, these were ideation areas that we could think about extending from our learning ecosystem. So we've got the current context and some areas that we might break through, some things that are needed, high value, important, or just plain should be on the top of our minds about our users. And now I'll bring a team to this exercise and say, these are the different areas. Everyone take a look. A lot of the stuff is, we try to make sure it's self-explanatory to a degree, and people can always ask clarifying questions and say, all right, let's do 5 minutes of silent writing. You can ideate in anywhere that you want, come up with any idea, throw it on here. If you're not sure where it goes, it's fine. Throw it on the top or throw it on the right side or put it in between. So we'll get a bunch of ideas in a silent writing session with people. Once again, like the empathy map, we'll do a quick debrief around that and get some cross context going with the teams. And then either do another round of silent writing for 5 minutes or so, or have a facilitated conversation for 15 or 20 minutes to continue to tease out ideas. Now, what happens here a lot, Claire, if you wouldn't mind, throw on at least 5 post-its for me in this. And so what happens is people really get unleashed and really excited about no constraints, and they will get a lot of ideas here. And it's not a bad thing at all. In fact, this can become an overlay for your whole team to think about how you weave innovation into the fabric of what you're doing in the future, and not just have it as an afterthought along the way. So there are some features in Mural that are really, really useful. There's something called dot voting. And I love dot voting in the real world because you can use a marker, my favorite Sharpie, and give everyone 3 dots. Let's say we had 10 participants and we had 50 ideas. It's too many ideas to explore all at once. We need to get some priority and some assemblage to those ideas. So if we had 10 people, I would say everyone gets 5 dots, put up 1 or more on the ideas that you think that we as a team should be exploring along the way. And then up here in Mural, there's something called a dot voting session. So I could start a voting session and I could set 3 votes per person, and boom, I could begin voting. And everyone have the opportunity, and they'd be able to click on their post-it choice and be able to see dots on there. And let's see. And then I can end the voting session. And then what it'll give you, which is really nice, is a quick view. Number 5, that had the most amount of results, and then these are the other things. Now, if I want, I might take the group on a 10 or 15 minute exploration into the top 3 innovation areas that they're interested in pursuing in some ways. So this helps you to give the collective context around it. So essentially now, we've got a learning ecosystem map. We've done a deeper dive into empathy. I finally just figured out how to use this mouse. I'm very happy about that. Now the dictionary is not popping up. So we know who the team is. We know all the variations of value prop. We've done the learning ecosystem canvas. We've done the empathy map. We've essentially created a number of different worlds. We've opened those worlds. And now we've explored each world individually. But now we can say, well, in order to do this, if we did this innovation idea, what does that solve for which of our, we might have 3 different empathy maps here. What does that do? How does that change what people see, or what people say? Do we add any gains to their life, or reinforce any gains? Do we resolve or remove any pains? And now we can keep working backwards and across these canvases and saying, well, let's enhance our value proposition and really think about, when we say engagement, what does that mean? How will we determine engagement? Does that mean non-voluntary consumption of learning? Now we have this big space that we understand because we've co-created it with one another to be able to start to ask questions. And then, our sort of normal course out of this is to identify then a plan of action and milestones. What are we going to work on for the next sprint, or 2 sprints, or 3 sprints? And what does that roadmap look like for the next 2 to 8 or 6 months even? And now we have the context that we can start to pull that kind of viewpoint of what our train tracks look like out in the future in some way for our stakeholders. But we have a ton of context, and we have a safe space where people can come back into, reorient. If you bring a new team member on, it's always great to unleash them, kind of give them a visual walkthrough of this and get them caught up to where everyone is. And there are a ton of other tools, and there are a lot of other ways to increase your space. But this is what I recommend as far as that first step into this. And look, these can be broken up depending upon your team size or the time or availability that they have. But in an optimal scenario, you really don't want to go beyond an hour and 45 or 2 hours in these types of workshops. People start to lose their cognitive momentum probably about 75 to 90 minutes in. So you want to break things up. Some tips and tricks. It's not bad to play music or get everyone to stand up when you're switching in between canvases, or do some stretching along the way to just keep the energy level up for everyone that's there. So highly suggest Mural. you could do this 157 different ways. I could do this and I could print everything out, stick it up on the board here, and you all could yell out, and I would just write down the Post-its and stick them up here. That's the easy analog and digital combo. This provides something where the work is distributed across the team and everyone feels some level of participation because they are participating and they're doing exactly what everyone else does. In situations where you have a diverse group of stakeholders that may or may not participate, the social proof factors that you get from others putting up Post-its and you seeing people's names or not seeing people's names or not noticing that, as we're working through the empathy map, Claire hasn't said anything. There's a social pressure to get participation, and it also softens the loud voices in the room. So it's a really great way to create not just a safe space, but a productive space to get people to look the same direction and to start to see the same thing. So we have a common context for planning. The hardest part about making a decision is knowing we have enough information to make it. Teams that we have taken through this process and further down the rabbit holes of transformation have enough information and enough context to make those decisions collectively because of the shared context and shared intuition that teams get from these types of exercises. So I'm super glad to open this up around dialogue or around specifics of what your challenges might be in bringing methodologies like this into your organization. So I've shared the core stuff with you, and I'm going to leave it up to the chat here to determine how we might help further.
Dave has a question about tips for.
Yeah, so that, that's a great question. There's a bunch of different tips here. So one thing is it's good to do this in a safe space with a team that works really well together. And if you have the opportunity to be able to run multiple iterations of this, it's not bad to run this with a small core team. And from a facilitator standpoint, if you haven't run this type of thing before, it gives you a safer space where you can fail along the way. The other side of it is, I think it's really key to giving and getting buy-in to have a diverse set of stakeholders. So it's always important to have someone from learning and development, the business. Never hurts to have someone from IT ever, because most of the things you're going to do are going to need a switch turned on or something to appear or disappear. And those are the magicians of our technology worlds. And I've seen places where, CFO and financial type stakeholders are also involved in the discussion. So that's I'll say the diversity of roles involved. I have seen a range of different participants ranging from exec to senior management along the way. In some situations, and I've done this cross-culturally and internationally, in some situations it's perfectly fine. In some situations, no one will participate until their senior person participates. So you have to be conscious of cultural norms in those scenarios, and also of perceived organizational hierarchies as well. And then, there's always the personality factor. You might have someone that is awesome and gregarious and maybe intimidating for others, or maybe others are afraid to step out and step in. And so doing some of the earlier exercises around the introductions and value propositions kind of sets the context for your Post-its aren't bigger than mine. Your words and my words are equal, and we're all equals together. So I hope that answered that question.
Does anyone else have any other questions? You can put them in the chat. We could turn your mic on if you want to ask it live.
Megan, that's a great question. I have run this for a couple 100-person companies and 80,000 person companies, and in the government space as well. Also, I've run this for nonprofit organizations, and even a diverse set of STEM stakeholders in Western Pennsylvania here. We actually, so to show the utility of something, the learning ecosystem canvas is great when you're trying to serve one value proposition broadly to one set of people. If you have super distinctly different stakeholder communities, and in this case we had parents, we had teachers, we had students, and we had businesses. We literally took the learning ecosystem canvas and took every single one of the 9 elements, and we broke that down into 4 and put teachers, parents, students, and workforce and corporations, and went through and looked at that alignment. That workshop actually had about 20 plus people in it. And we did that workshop face-to-face on a chalkboard with beautiful neon Post-its. And it was about a 3-hour workshop. And it worked very well. And the context from that allowed the team to develop a proposal and win about $1 million in state funding for a STEM ecosystem. To answer the question in terms of their evolution, so transformation isn't a one-time thing. Transformation is a vector for us to move in a different direction, often eventually out of sight from where we are now. And so no matter where someone is in their transformation, the context that a team is able to achieve together from this just helps with the change management and momentum. And that's a lot of the output from some of these exercises, in addition to others, is really thinking about change management. Knowing what to do is one thing. Doing it and bringing everyone along on the journey, not having one fall off the caboose or get run over by the train, is also extremely important. Mary, let's see, security on mural. I think it's pretty good. I have had no issues, and I like to try to break stuff for what that is worth. Let's see here. No, and correct, Mary, they don't need to buy murals. So if I was running this workshop as a facilitator or as a consultant, I need a mural account. But I can invite people and they can come in and they can participate and they could do a bunch of stuff. They can't do everything. They can't create their own murals, but they could make Post-its and they could view the mural. There's also some plug-in stuff, and I would have showed you this if I didn't have to boot up a new piece of hardware that isn't connected to anything that I have. You can integrate Zoom and Mural quite well together with some plugins along the way. Can someone tell me what's above Dave Lucy's contact chat item there? About something about 0 time and production?
I'm looking here. It's Megan. She's in a manufacturing environment and there is 0 time for anything other than production, but she'd love to do something like this with them.
Lunchtime. Buying people food is the best bait. Yeah. Conveniently, just before this call, one of the few people that was traveling through this office had their dog, and I was trying to make friends with it, and it didn't want to talk to me. It just wanted to wag its tail and run away. But I had treats, and now the dog is my new friend. So not that your teammates are canines in any way, but food goes a long way. Pizza is the cheapest form of bait per unit weight. I mean, the key thing too, I mean, there are a few other, psychological, framing things before you take people in the journey. Hey, we're going to do something really cool. We're going to think differently. And we're going to be able to do stuff differently. I'd really like you to consider coming to this. It's going to be fun, and we're going to get stuff done. And we're going to come out of there and we're going to get to ride a roller coaster together. And so creating, a sense of legend, a sense of excitement, and those types of things. Mary, I'm with you. It's a good question. I mean, I know everything's HTTPS, but and Claire, maybe you can figure this out in the background. I don't know if there's two FAA, but there are. I'll comment on a couple things. You can what I shared with you. So, I'm looking at HTTPS security as a primary thing, because security is paramount for basically everyone that I work with too. The other thing is, you guys have an open link. Anyone with that link can see this mural. But with the sharing tools, you can determine, who essentially you want to be there and invite them via email address, and you can lock that down. You can also lock down within domains as well. So there are additional security features other than the out of the box that take advantage of identity of people along the way. I'm going to throw out something that you're going to hit if you do this. So if I go over here and I select one of Claire's Post-its, I can move it because I'm a facilitator, and Claire can move it because she's Claire. In fact, anyone can move anyone's stuff here along the way. So I can grab this and I can drag it over to here. But what I can't do is I grab this empathy map canvas, because you see in the lower right corner, there's a lock on it. So once I set up a sheet like this, and I forgot to tell you this, but it's really important because you will make the same mistake that I've made in the past. Once you do that, you're going to click your object and there we go. So essentially, if you're on Windows, you're right clicking. I found the magic here. So I can unlock that. So if I unlock that, actually, I'm going to just unlock all. And what that does, now I can grab anything that's here and move that around. Now, that gives you the freedom and flexibility to kind of configure your space. But once you have your space set up, you're gonna want to go back and you're gonna want to lock everything back up on that. So and only facilitators can unlock. That's my suggestion to you. You can do whatever you like, but if things can break, they will break at some point in time, and normally it's in the most inopportune time. So I lock that back up. Some of the other things are unlocked, but that's the key to making your space safe, so that no one accidentally moves something or someone deletes something. The only sort of free structural space for you is using the Post-its on top of that. So the other question that someone didn't ask is, what do I do with this when I'm done? So you can export everything from here. Let's see. Sorry. Just trying to get rid of my chat. Yeah. And you can export in a variety of ways. So to answer that question from earlier, Mary, as well. So if I want to share this, I can invite people by specific email addresses, and then they have a specific thing, and then they're going to have to log in if they're not a member. So you can control identity that way. What I just did was give you the visitor link, but you can set permissions. So I could lock this one down, just members of Allen Interactions domain in some way, or you could set it here as well. So there's a lot of different configuration items. I would have to bet, and these guys just took on another huge round of funding. I would have to bet, and I'll look deeper because I'm interested about what they're pen testing on their server infrastructure, and what at least security certifications they claim levels of conformance to along the way. But then you can export these things as well. So I can do the entire thing as a PDF or a ping, or just throw everything into a zip file. So, if I was working with, we'll say the fictitious S-Mart organization, I might run this exercise, and then I would take this and do some analysis and synthesis, develop a number of insights, maybe a notional roadmap for this is what the next 2 to 9.2 months looks like, whatever was interest from shining the flashlight into the future perspective for the organization. And then I would compile a slide deck that says, this is what we did. This is why we did it. This is what we did. This is how we did it. These were the results. This is what the big map looks like. Let's get in here. I might even circle some things in different areas and then say, this is a connection between these things, saying we need face-to-face and augmented, digital instruction to be lockstep for this particular thing that we might have discovered, along the way. And think of this as, you're panning for gold. We're going to get a lot of rocks and a lot of dirt in here. And being able to do the analysis and synthesis, and then think about what the insights and what the magical, sort of connection potentials are across this, gives a really, really good way to do that. So that's our favorite sort of, we're going to give you initial findings, because it's like, yeah, I could just say, hey, everyone go look at what we did. But it's really important to have some top down, like, hey, these are the 4 themes: people, connection, transformation, and right resource, right time. And here's why. We saw this pop up in the following locations. And the analysis and synthesis element of this is something different, because I've done these that we had 60 data points. I've done these where we had 2,000 data points. Done these where we had a couple thousand data points, and then used focus groups, survey instruments, and then took the innovation building block exercise out to a bunch of different groups. And we literally had over 20,000 data points to look at, evaluate, and try to identify what are the top level themes. So, the more people you involve, the more facets that you develop of this with different groups of stakeholders, your complexity goes up, but your opportunity for getting enough fidelity of information to be able to synthesize that in a meaningful way to create overarching insights for what your action plan is good. The question becomes, when is good enough good enough? What else can I answer for you guys? I really appreciate these questions.
Hey, I don't know if you answered Dave's question. Was about, you said you touched on the fact that some people may be apprehensive to share in a group setting, depending on the participants and other factors. Do you see any benefit to anonymous participation? And if so, how would you do it? And do you have any case studies from doing it yourself from experience?
Yeah, so great question. I found that if I just share a link and everyone's anonymous, the names like Anonymous Tiger, Anonymous Zebra, they make people chuckle. It's kind of fun. And I really like the fun factor that Mural worked into their user experience. It's good to have people declare themselves, in some ways. There's, let's see if I can move this out of the way. There's an activity log that we can essentially see, everything that happened here through this, which is really nice. After you build something like this, and everyone's had access, and 2 or 3 weeks go by, and you're like, what happened? Well, Claire added an 8, and Claire added a 7. And Mike did a voting session on some things. So it gives you this really nice activity feed of that. And so as a facilitator, I'm always trying to balance participation, soften the loud voices and amplify the quiet voices. My measure for session effectiveness is post-its per minute, or PPM. If you're a science nerd like I am, that's also parts per million. We're talking post-its per minute. And so that's a measure for, like, am I keeping momentum, through this? When you're doing a learning ecosystem canvas, you're going to start, you're going to run it for 20 or 30 minutes. You might have 30 or 40 post-its. That's good. If you ran it for 20 minutes with 40 post-its, that's 2 post-its per minute. So your PPM is good. Same thing on empathy, same thing on innovation building blocks, really same thing on anything along the way. Anonymity itself is, it's interesting, and in some situations it makes sense to leverage. It also makes sense to have identity, and it's going to depend on the particular situation. If someone's waffling on that decision, that 5 to 7 minutes of dialogue, and I can help you make the best decision with the least amount of information possible. Well, I really appreciate the time and thoughtfulness. I hope this is helpful. Like I said, if you need icebreaker stuff, shoot me an email. I'll send you the encyclopedia. Suggest that you buy the gaming storming book. A bunch of assumptions about the recency of the information around the ecosystem canvas and the innovation building blocks from our previous discussion. But those URLs are available if you need to go back and look at something. But if anybody says, all right, I think I got enough, but I need a validation checkpoint before I just run this experiment and pay $62 for pizza or whatever that might be, hit me up. Glad to chat with you and then give you specific context of tips and tricks for your instantiation of this type of work. And there's other tools you might plug in depending. Like some people have like serious regulatory environments. So there's context canvases and other tools that you might plug in to build your wall of thought to define the journey that your team is on and going on in the future. All right. Any final thoughts or questions or comments? Once again, thank you so much for spending some time together. We love this. This helps people a lot, and hopefully it's helpful for you. And we're glad to chat and share how it might be helpful.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. Thanks everyone for attending. Have a great rest of your day.